Hey guys, my name's Michael, and I'm solo developing a sci-fi third-person action-adventure shooter in Unity. I'm also brand new to Unity and only about 3 months into it, so I thought it would be interesting to try and do devlogs from a beginner's perspective. So with that, this would be the intro and current state of my game. So after about 2 years of developing a 2D Android game with libgdx, I decided to take a shot at a 3D game. I landed on Unity for the engine and Blender to create my models and meshes. So I was floating around this idea of a third-person shooter for a while. A sci-fi action adventure, have a lot of puzzles, mini bosses with mechanics. I've always been very fond of games that have raid-like mechanics on their bosses, where it's not just shoot them or DPS check, but think like a Destiny game where you have objectives to complete while you're fighting a boss. So I want my boss fights to kind of have that feel to it, where you've got to figure something out while you're fighting the boss and doing that DPS. So since this is my first devlog and everything is new, I'm just going to do a brief preview of all my models and characters and kind of how they've progressed. As you can tell, they started off pretty bad, and they've gotten better over time. And I'm getting to a point where I'm happy with my current models. My main character, a couple of my enemy characters, I think are maybe their final stage. They maybe get a reskin, but I'm pretty happy with how these are turning out. I will say environmental objects, I haven't spent a lot of times on those, like trees and whatnot. I'm using assets for that right now. So once I have time and motivation to do that kind of thing, I'll probably go in and replace all my trees and rocks and stuff with my own. So at this point in my project, this was kind of a milestone for me. I recorded my first real kind of trailer type deal for it, because I was pretty proud of where I was with it. It was starting to look decent and like a decent game. I got a lot of new models and meshes in here, and then got my jumping puzzle, my first jumping puzzle implemented. So yeah, at this point I had a lot of mechanics working. Run, jump, shoot, fight enemies. The jumping puzzle was there. So now this is currently where I'm at as of making this video. I've gotten to a point where I've done and touched just about everything I wanted to the point where I want to start thinking about an alpha test. So this is my first scene, what I'm calling Act 0. It's kind of the intro. It'll eventually have kind of the guide, how to play, shoot your gun, jump, whatnot. You crash land on this planet and don't really know where you're at. Wake up, realize your ship's damaged, need to go recover an item to get your ship running or power operating at least. Get your blaster, your first weapon, charged. I'm working off for the base weapon, the base blaster. It's going to work off a battery charge on yourself. It's this green bar. So you basically have infinite shots with it, but you have a charge that depletes when you use it. And that is actually going to be tied to special action items like the drone and the shield you might have saw in the intro. So this is my second scene. It's kind of a continuation from the first scene. Once you start the zone, it'll be a small hike to the center section, which is kind of like the main area. There's a big gate here with 2 key places. And then, a left area and a right area where you have to go get a key. The left area is going to be a puzzle of some sorts. I'm still thinking about it. It's going to be probably based around like a game board. Maybe checkers, chess type, with some mechanics involving the enemies spawning and something you have to do to figure that puzzle out. And then the right side is going to be more of just a mini boss fight with some pretty simple mechanics, but it'll be introduction to a first mini boss fight, and it's not just going to be shooting at the boss. After completing the first act, at this point I'm going to have kind of a fork into 3 or 4 other zones that you have to go complete some objectives. So my first one here is kind of the snowy mountain themed with the forest. Each of these next zones I want to feel completely different, possibly different planets, but very much different enemies. Maybe have our common enemy, which are these androids that you've seen in some of them. But I haven't spent a lot of time on this one. I've just did my kind of little test scene that I used for my trailer, and kind of just to get a feel of what I want the environment to look like for this area, as well as started building out a research type center, sci-fi center that'll have a puzzle and a mini boss somewhere around it. Next, this brings us to the next zone, which is a beachfront type zone. I'm still thinking about what to do with the water. I want to kind of implement something with the water, maybe a boat, I don't know. But when you land here, there's a couple research ships, these big domes, kind of drew some inspiration from Capsule Corp. But yeah, so there'll be a puzzle involving these ships, and then there's also an underground section to the center that the goal is going to be to unlock that, get down there and figure out what's going on down there. And I have in mind a satellite and a satellite dish alignment kind of puzzle to figure out. You'll have to go between the 2 ships to align those things and get the codes and something along those lines. But this zone also is the first time I implemented the drop ship coming in and dropping off some enemies. So that was probably the most recent thing I've worked on, and I'll be adding that into other zones now that I have it. So other zones I have in mind is a kind of an enchanted forest feel. So it'll be a very magical type zone, kind of like my first act with the spellcasters and whatnot, but kind of that enchanted forest zone. I want to have some unique creatures there and kind of really bring the fantasy feature there. And then also I have a zone out in space, kind of like on a space Hulk or a junk just floating, and be kind of a low gravity. So yeah, with that, I think I'm wrapping up my first devlog. I know this one was more high level, didn't get into any code at all. And it was more just an introduction. The next devlog I come out with will be more focused on code and items I fixed or implemented for the first time, models I add, that kind of thing. A little bit more of an actual devlog than this was. This was more of just the introduction, but thanks for watching, guys. Like and subscribe if you want, and hopefully I'll see you in the next devlog.